Hello, welcome to
Common Roots. I love that.
This is the podcast where we dig into stories, science, spirit, herbs, herbalism, history, all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Disclaimer, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare practitioner, like a clinical herbalist or your doctor, before starting any herbal regimens, especially if you are pregnant, nursing on medication, or have any known medical conditions. And, as always, we encourage you to harvest plants ethically and sustainably with positive identification.
Please don't use AI. I've seen too many stories lately of people using AI for mushrooms. It's not reliable.
Today's episode is B for Birch, which we will talk about a little bit later. How you doing today?
We have a fancy dinner for Valentine's Day.
If you celebrated Valentine's, we hope you had a good one. By the time this comes out, it'll be over already.
Yeah. Or Galentine's.
Galentine's is great too.
Just staying home and having some you time.
Just
also
a really
good.
nice Saturday where you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, today we are going to be talking a little bit about a lighter topic. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, because the podcast comes out every 2 weeks, I wanted to say bi-weekly, but people might think that's twice a week. So it's every other week. Like I said, a couple weeks ago, we had a little bit of a darker topic. It was very serious, at least.
But important.
Totally important. And I learned a lot of really valuable things when researching about it. And I hope that if you listen to it, you also learned some really valuable things from it.
You taught me a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't know most of that stuff, to be honest.
So in light of that, we're going to try, like I said, we don't want to get too crazy about politics and all of the hating on the government stuff every single time. So today we're going to do something a little fun, a little lighter, something history-based so you can get in on your history stuff.
I love history.
And we're going to talk about the Middle Ages, because there's a lot of myths surrounding the Middle Ages. History paints the Middle Ages, or I shouldn't say history, popular media, especially because we're in England. I think pretty much everybody has remembered Monty Python and things like that. So a lot of this is painted as like the Dark Ages, right? People are crazy religious nut jobs. Your lord is beating the crap out of you every day and taking all of your food.
And everyone's a dirty, stinking peasant digging in the mud.
Yes. To be fair, a lot of those things did happen and are true. There were a lot of misunderstandings about hygiene and science. And there were a lot of really cruel people who had power over other people. But it's actually not as terrible as a lot of people might think. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And because a lot of the formative herbalism comes from the Middle Ages, I just thought that would be an interesting angle to take as well. I did a lot of really fun deep dives for this. I ended up scrolling through the Cambridge Digital Archives, where they have actual books that they've digitized that are from the year 1100. So the full timeline of the Middle Ages goes from the year 500 to the year 1500. So it's a huge span of time. We're talking about 1,000 years. So I narrowed down most of my sources and study area has been from 1000 to 1300, because once you start getting into the late Middle Ages, like 13, 14, 1500, you start getting into the Renaissance anyway, which is kind of a different thing, and science changed drastically and all that kind of stuff. So technically 1000 to 1300 is considered the late Middle Ages for the history buffs out there who are yelling at me about, that's not the Middle Ages, that's just a little bit of it.
Well, it's impossible to talk about a 500 to 1500 year span. That's...
Yeah,
how different was the world 1,000 years ago from today?
Exactly. There has been a wealth of research and a ton of recent archaeological finds, which have unearthed the idea that medicine in the Middle Ages was actually pretty advanced. And they actually had a culture of wellness and holistic care that incorporated elements of diet, exercise, spirituality, and medicine all together. So I think pretty much, well, I'm not going to say everyone, because a lot of people don't know as much nerd history as we do. But you and I are very familiar already with the Four Humours. So anyway, the basic idea behind the Four Humours is that you have four fluids in your body: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. And that's why there's the really popular thing about bleeding.
For a long time, yeah.
Yeah. So for a long time, they were like, well, you're suffering from these symptoms, so you got too much blood in you.
And then they get you the leeches.
Yeah. Or they just cut you open. That's what surgeons were. Surgeons were barbers who would bleed people.
Yeah.
Ignoring the really unscientific aspect of the Four Humours, the idea behind it was one that was a focus on balance, a focus on a healthy, well-rounded lifestyle.
Yeah.
And when it did come to like leeches and bleeding, that was more like, well, you're showing evidence of an imbalance.
So
not
they have
just
to balance you out.
Right.
But by bleeding you.
Yes.
Yeah, so not perfect.
Yeah.
But I do know, I want to say it was Avicenna, came up with, for indigestion, crushed seashells. And that is, yeah, if you ever have one of those like chalky tasting tablets for indigestion, that's basically what that is. And this is like thousands of year old medicine. And it does work, and it did work then. And he wrote it down in his book, and everyone thought that's a great idea. And then he also wrote some other things in his book that weren't true. And everyone said, well, he was right about the other thing, so he's probably right about this. And unfortunately, that isn't how it works.
Yeah. I mean, it is one of those things where, like I said, there's a lot of myths and a lot of bad science that came out of it, but there's a lot of good stuff. So yeah, that's my whole disclaimer is, here's my little disclaimer on, just to be clear, medieval life sucked for 90% of people. I am not talking about primitivism here. I don't think we should get rid of modern technology and science.
In some ways.
I mean,
and in some ways it was better.
Infant mortality was at 50% or higher. Women had no
horrible.
rights and were probably going to die in childbirth. Serfs and peasants had to make everything that they used by hand, had to give 10% to their lord and 10% to the church.
But I also...
No one knew how to read or write. Children were expected to start working at age 12, blah, 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 blah. I just want to make sure everyone knows I know it was not good. And I am not at all using this topic to promote everyone
feudalism.
gives up. Yeah. Everyone gives up on modern technology and goes and lives in the woods under a lord.
I do know that peasants after the harvest would get like months off basically. And a lot of them would work doing other different jobs to make money basically. But you could just not do anything for 3 months. Yeah. Especially in the winter when it's freezing and there's not much you even can do. Mm-hmm. It's like you stayed at home and hung out and that was it. Yeah. And I think that sounds pretty nice. But yeah, I do. I mean, I child mortality being 50%. I mean, what a nightmare. And it's horrible because you do see especially in the older cemeteries and stuff, there's gravestones, dozens of gravestones. And it's they're all children. And I just couldn't imagine going through that even once, let alone a half a dozen times. And that's everyone had to do that. A lot of people had to do that. So that is really horrible. But,
yeah. So yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that I'm not promoting a back to the Middle Ages mindset here. But I really think that there's a lot of useful stuff to be found in historical records and things like that.
I'm a big nerd. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and things, right? A lot of things are based on actually specifically a snapshot of English history. And it's just not accurate. And one of those things that I was told, but basically that it was the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, was a stinky, dirty, filthy place, people throwing their waste onto the street, and it would just kind of fester there, and that was horrible. And in the cities, that did sometimes happen. It depended on the time and place. But I know in the same time period, China and the Middle East were thriving to begin with. They had complicated sewer systems, a lot of those places. Japan, I know, this was later, closer to the late Middle Ages, I think what you're saying, would actually have people collect what they called night soil and use it as fertilizer, which had its own problems because it gives you parasites. But the streets were clean, basically. And it all comes down to this one street in London that did do that, but this was the poorest slum in London. So obviously that's horrible, but it was not reflective of how the whole time period was for everyone. Because most people live not in the cities, too, right? It was mostly rural people. So you wouldn't have to deal with stuff like that. I was having a discussion on the internet with some random people who know as little as I do. But they were suggesting that maybe there's a lot of wood smoke because almost everyone, they heat their homes, everything with wood. So there was wood smoke everywhere. So these days, people smell like soap because we clean ourselves with soap. But back then, a lot of people probably smelled like wood smoke.
So what you were saying in regards to sort of what we've been told about the Middle Ages, a lot of that goes back to two different sources. So the first is medieval clerical tracts, often described medieval peasants as brutish animals, basically, who didn't understand anything and were so beneath them. And then later on in the Victorian era, a lot of people were writing again about medieval hygiene, but it wasn't like, wow, they actually had hygiene that was pretty good for their time. It was, look how far we've come and how much better we are than them. So it is like a cartoonish depiction of these medieval people. Disposal of waste in cities as well as everywhere else, clean water from wells, and public baths were all available in pretty much all of Europe and England and Scotland and Wales and everywhere. Everyone had them. Everyone washed in the morning. Straw bedding was most commonly used by peasants, but it was changed pretty much every other day. And they mixed in herbs like basil, chamomile, and mint to improve the smell and stave off insects. It was also extremely common for everyone to wash their hands before and after eating because not a lot of people had utensils and they were using their hands to eat. Soap was widely available and used. And yeah, it wasn't scented, but it was like wood ash and lye. That was available, and even peasants had access to it.
Well, that has its own scent. Because I've never experienced this myself, but I've heard from people that do like hiking a lot. When you're out in the woods, basically, you don't have you don't bring soap with you a lot of the time, basically, right? And then when you come back to society, you can smell other people smell like really strongly of soap. But basically, that's what I was discussing with other people on the internet, that was maybe people back then would have smelled really strongly of wood smoke. But in the same way, most of us are so used to it. So we just smell nothing, basically, right? You just smell like you're not dirty, basically. But really, you do smell of soap. It's just that we've been smelling soap from everyone we've ever met all the time, except for a few people who are very stinky. Yeah. So we're used to it. But maybe back then everyone would have smelled, or a lot of things even. Everyone and everything around you would have smelled like wood smoke. But then you would, like, after like 2 weeks of living in that world, it would just smell like nothing.
Yeah, and teeth cleaning was also a thing. Hazel twigs were most commonly used to clean your teeth. You would chew on it, and the way that it kind of breaks up creates fibers.
Yeah.
So, so just hygiene was something that was practiced. And it wasn't obviously practiced to the same level. Like if you were a noble, you were using scented soaps, you were using perfumes. But even peasants washed their hands, washed their hair. People didn't like having fleas and lice and would get rid of them. They didn't just live with it.
Well, I know like the Romans had bathhouses everywhere, but they spread that tradition everywhere. Unfortunately, a lot of it was quite advanced technologically, and it also required a lot of like industry, basically, that a lot of it was lost. But even then, a lot of it, like the culture and tradition of bathhouses, I think stayed in a lot of regions. I know it was popular in Germany at times, though. I mean, I can't talk about the whole of Europe throughout 1,000 years, like you said. But I do know that like bathhouses were quite popular a lot of places. The Turkish had a lot of bathhouses. They inherited that proper Roman tradition, basically. The Germans, I think, had bathhouses. But then there were, like, panics, basically. Like, a disease would start spreading. And, you know, it's way worse than COVID was, so you can imagine. And it kills, like, 10% of the people who get it. And because everyone would congregate in the bathhouse, and there's a lot of, like, steam and hot air and water. And I also know some hanky-panky got up to in a lot of bathhouses that often they would be like centers of infection. So when a panic would spread, people would just stop going to the bathhouse. And then, but I think you're right. I think a lot of people read sources that say they stopped going to the bathhouse and they're like, oh, well then they were just filthy and disgusting and they never went and they never cleaned themselves ever. And it's like, no, during COVID, you know, if we couldn't go to if we didn't have showers in our houses and had to go to a bathhouse or whatever, We wouldn't just be like, guess I'm just going to not clean myself. I mean, a few people would, but probably not most of society.
Yeah. So there was also a thing called regimens, which were books that told the reader how to stay healthy. They focused on diet, sleep, exercise, and managing emotions. Even though most people couldn't read, clergy were everywhere, and they would read these texts to the public regularly.
Really?
There was one book called the Canon of Medicine. It was a widely read book in medieval universities and was shared even to peasants living in cities. It outlined both hygiene and medicine as essential to maintaining your health. And I'm going to quote from it. The art of preserving the health lies in an equilibrium among the things that we have described. There are 7 things that should in particular be kept in mind: the equilibrium of the complexion, the selection of food and drink, the elimination of that which is superfluous, care for the composition of the body, the rectification of that which is breathed in through the nostrils, a moderate exercise of the body and the spirit, which in a certain sense also involves sleeping and waking.
I actually like almost all of that, I think. I will say, I think some people in pursuing health are almost too strict. And listen, if that works for you, you should do that. But I do think, like, having a couple of beers every once in a while is okay. You know, just don't, like, chug a big chug. I mean, maybe do if you're young, but just realize that it's very unhealthy.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these regimens there were a lot of regimens that were written specifically for specific scholars or nobles or whatever.
Yeah.
And it would be like, enjoy wine, but refrain from overindulgence. So they were like, enjoy your life, but overindulgence is the problem.
Yeah.
The Theater of Health was another book that had 6 rules for healthy living. The first rule is always to breathe good, fresh air. The second is to consume the right food and drink in the right amounts. The third is regular activity and rest. The fourth is to refrain from too much sleep or too much wakefulness. The fifth concerns the retention and expulsion of the humors. And the sixth is to be moderate in joy, fear, and anxiety.
I mean, I do think the first one, I don't know. I'm going to wildly speculate, and maybe I'm right. I know they had a miasma theory, I remember now, that basically bad smells is what cause disease. But, like, we have to remember, like, because a lot of people, I think, look at that and they're like, oh, they're so stupid. They had no idea. But I think, like, that's a pretty good theory if you don't know that germ theory is a thing, right? Like, if something's stinky, stay away from it. That actually works quite often.
I mean, have you ever, like, had the flu for, like, 3 or 4 days? You smell awful. And if someone comes into the room of the person who's sick and they're like, oh, God, it's stinking here, and then they get the flu because they don't know, I would absolutely assume. I'd be like, that smell had to have something to do with it.
And also, you know, they didn't have, like, filtered water, right? And, like, we treat our water with all kinds of stuff now to make it so that it doesn't kill you. So if you pull out some water and it smells a little funny, don't drink that. Go somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And that works, right? Like, it doesn't work perfectly. Sometimes things are stinky that are good for you, right? And also sometimes things are stinky and I find them delicious, like garlic.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, it is... If you don't know that germ theory is a thing, and how could you without a microscope, then that's a pretty good theory, right? It's not like
terrible.
An insane, stupid thing that people just made out of nowhere. It actually probably was more good than it was bad. I think a lot of things medically in the past were that way, right? Like the humors thing that you were discussing. Like, obviously we know a lot of that now is bunk science, but they literally didn't have science. I think they invented science, the term science, in like 1500 or whatever. So, like, you know, it's okay that they did the best they could. They were like, the people who live in a way that is more moderate, that they don't overindulge in any one specific thing, tend to live healthier, longer, better lives. So we're going to say you need to be more moderate. Yeah. And then obviously, you know, they look at the body and there's a bunch of different goops in it and they don't know what the heck it is. They don't have microscopes. So they're like, okay, keep all your goops good. And then it does boil down into, we should start putting leeches on people, which is probably mostly bad. But it's like, you can see how they got there, and most of it was probably good.
Yeah.
So it was like they were like 80% correct,
and
you'd live about that often.
And I think another thing that's really important is that they were doing this because they cared about people. They wanted people to live good, wholesome, long lives. They saw people around them dying in childbirth or crippled from physical labor or, starving. And they were like, how can we help people to live better lives without getting rid of the nobility? Because why would you do that?
You can't say that either, or you don't get your books published.
Exactly.
You get your head chopped off.
Yeah. So the next big myth, I would say, is mental illness, which is addressed quite a lot in a lot of these texts. So the big myth that you and I have definitely heard, and probably a lot of people have heard, is that all mental illness was blamed on sin or demonic possession. That was what it was. You had someone who was acting funny, and the church was like, Satan has possessed them, and exorcisms and all this horrible shit. Sorry. Bad language. However, in a study of medieval texts, only 16% of medieval depictions of mental illness were attributed to demonic possession. Those are the worst cases. And even you were talking about your middle name and how that came from the church as this horrible thing.
I have a lot of religious trauma, and also I had a long struggle with depression before ketamine, basically. And I found during one of my many Wikipedia history binges the obscure historical fact that at one point, before they eventually sort of codified the 7 deadly sins, there was a deadly sin called acedia. And basically what it boils down to is having depression. They were like, if you have depression, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah, it was like excessive melancholy.
Yes. So kind of my pushback and against that, which admittedly, so a pushback against something that happened like 1,000 years ago, but was that I chose that as my middle name, Acedia.
Yeah.
And I think most people don't. It just sounds like a name. So most people aren't like, cool historical reference, which is kind of what I wanted.
But definitely,
I thought about some more spicy names, but I decided against them.
Yeah. But definitely there are bad depictions of mental illness. There's a lot of stuff like that. But like I said, it was only 16% that was really like, this is absolutely demonic possession and nothing else. I have a fun little quote from another book that was from the Middle Ages. There are, of course, several types of the disease depending on its original cause. Sometimes the cause is melancholic food. At other times, it is the consumption of strong wines which overheat the body juices. Furthermore, frenzies may occur because of sufferings of the soul like restlessness, sadness, and anxiety. Finally, frenzy may be caused by the virulence of noxious juices, if such abound in the body of a man who inclines to that malady.
Noxious juices, huh?
Yeah, I don't know what that
does that
means. Either, but I liked the quote.
Does it just mean that they're stinky?
I wonder if it has to do with, because it's sort of humors based, right? So if they're like vomiting a lot, because they've drunk a ton.
That is fair. I mean, you also, if you get cirrhosis, right? Mm-hmm. Then that makes you vomit when you drink.
Yeah, but they were aware of causes for mental illness. An interesting one for people in the clerical and scholarly professions, excessive study would make people kind of go crazy. And it was like, hey, take a break.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying about peasants having more free time, 60 days a year were absolutely verboten, no work could be done on those days.
Wow.
Because they were holy days.
Oh, yeah, that's
true.
So,
and people didn't always go to church just because it was a holy day.
Well, even if you did, how long do you spend there?
Yeah.
I mean, I used to go to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
It was 1 hour.
Yeah.
That's how the Catholics do it.
Yeah, so that's 3 times as many days as they get in the UK off.
Plus, I will say, I think that the church is a big, like, especially in the Middle Ages where it's mandatory, there was a lot of community there. So
Yeah,
you go there.
I have that in my notes for sure. We'll get there.
Sure, but basically you go there for 1 hour at 8 a.m. or whatever. The priest says his stuff in Latin. You don't even know what the heck he's saying.
Yeah.
And then you all get together and, chat and gossip and, have baked goods and tea or whatever, so it's more of like a get-together, a community get-together. So I'm sure they were having a good time on a lot of those holy days.
Absolutely.
But it is also like, there is some level of, you're probably not supposed to get wasted on a holy day. So it's like there's a distinction between like the nice community get-together potluck sort of thing. And then, there were other times when it would be like, okay, now we're going to get absolutely wasted.
Yeah. Something I found. So contemporary concerns about mental health would have made sense to medieval people who believed that emotions could have an impact on your physical health. For this reason, they worried about stress, and medical professionals at the time emphasized the importance of relaxation. They listed things like music, good company, and spending time outdoors could all form parts of a healthy lifestyle, while arguments, noisy neighbors, and overwork were avoided. As a general regimen against melancholy, Bernard de Gourdon recommended joy and laughter, which counteracted grief and the sorrow of melancholy. Oh, I can't say it suddenly. Bernard de Gourdon also indicated that the house of a melancholic should be clean, luminous, and full of pleasant odors. Everything in your home should be pleasant and delightful, and anything that might cause fear or anxiety should be avoided. Music and discussions with friends are beneficial.
See, I like a lot of that second part. I think that's all true, right? If you live in squalor, and it's hard. I know it's so hard when you're very sad. But if you live in squalor, it can make you more sad, and it can make it harder to stop being sad. However, the first sentence that you said had me rolling my eyes, because it does sound very like, the cure to being sad is to just be happy and laugh.
Obviously, clinical depression and a lot of the mental illnesses, they didn't understand that there was a physical component to it. But we know that now. But even then, we know now if you are suffering from depression, you should absolutely go get medication and speak to medical professionals. But you should also try to live a more connected life. Like, don't isolate yourself. Keep your space clean. Try to take outdoor walks. Like, all these things are recommended even to people who are already on medication.
I will also say one of my coping mechanisms that I thankfully haven't had to use in many years. But if there's something that I feel like I can't really fix, it's just something I have to deal with. Like someone you love dies, right? I would often watch like very goofy, silly cartoons. And it's true that you can, because when you're in your own head like that, at least for me, I would spiral, right? I'd be like, this is horrible. I hate this so much. I hate hating this. I hate hating that I hate hating this. And it's like you just sink into this swamp, this mud. And then watching cartoons, it takes your attention off of it, so you're not able to go into that negative thought spiral. And also, like, if someone says a really funny joke enough times, no matter different jokes, if they just said the same one, I'm sure that would be very annoying. But no matter how bad you're feeling, right? Like, you can get over it to some extent. Not get over it, but you know what I mean? Like, you still laugh. And that does help to laugh.
Yeah. I know there's a big stigma sometimes where someone's like, oh, well, I suffer from depression. And then someone's like, oh, I saw you down at the pub hanging out with your friends, having a laugh.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not how depression works.
Yeah.
Like, someone can still be suffering, but they want to engage in the world. They want to feel good feelings.
And that's part of the treatment of it, really. I think that does make sense. Yeah. Like, if you're feeling really bad, maybe it'd be nice to go to like a comedy show of a comedian that you think is hilarious, right? Yeah. And I know it's going to be tough to drag. Trust me, I know it's going to be tough to drag yourself out of the house and go to something like that. But that could help. Laughter is often the best medicine, but you got to find something really funny that'll make you laugh. So. That's sometimes easier said than done, because
Yeah.
I do remember there were times when I'd try to do that and I'd watch something that was not as funny as it thought it was, and it would make me feel worse. And I actually think, on an unhealthy level, this is a former coping mechanism that I used to have. I think mostly, I hope anyway. But a unhealthy coping mechanism is that you can, in fact, replace the feeling of sadness with many other feelings. And it doesn't have to be a positive feeling like laughter. You can just get really mad. And that is a bad, bad thing. And it will distort you, and it will distort your opinions, because now you're still in a negative thought spiral. It's just that instead of being miserable and beating yourself up, you're furious about something, right? And that's not good. So if you catch yourself doing that, also maybe you should be like, why don't I look at something funny and chill out?
Yeah. So another fun fact. I don't know if these are fun facts, but another factoid. Anyway, magic or ritual healing was understood to enable someone to play an active role in feeling better. So they had a lot of things like prayers, liturgies, charms, and rituals. Even in places where the church was like super domineering, a lot of people just kept doing pagan stuff, but they would replace God or Jesus with whatever they used to do. So
well, the other way around. They'd replace whatever they used to do with God or Jesus.
Correct. Yeah. You got it. But these things allow the patient to kind of separate themselves into a more calming space, often with the support of like your priest, or they had wise women, or cunning folk is also how they were called. So it's really no different to like go into this room and meditate for a while and try to. A systematic analysis of studies that I found shows that religion and spirituality obviously contribute to your well-being. Now, again...
Depends, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because for me, it contributed to the polar opposite.
Yeah, I think everyone's experience is different, but for those who have a positive religious or spiritual outlook, religion provides resources for coping with stress that may increase the frequency of positive emotions and reduce the likelihood that stress will result in emotional disorders such as depression, anxiety, unaliving, and substance abuse. So it does seem like overall about 73% of people reported that being religious or having a spiritual connection to something made them feel better physically.
Well, so I will say, in my own experience, it was the organized part of my religion that made it a nightmare for me. I was forced into it from a child, right? I didn't have a choice. I just was told that I am. Then they sent me into a little brainwashing camp for a couple of hours every week or whatever. And then, if you asked the wrong questions, you'd get in big trouble. It just generally was sort of an unpleasant time, basically. And you then often, we went to church every Sunday, and the priest was very often not a particularly respectable person. And basically, he would ramble and moralize at us, and then act in a way that was very contrary to the way that he spoke.
Yeah.
And I also remember we had a lot of pray for the troops and things. And it's like, I don't know that I really do want... I mean, obviously I don't want anyone to die, but maybe our troops shouldn't be over in a random country killing like 1 million people. That would be cool too. But I will say, post losing my religion, I was also quite miserable. And I do think that part of my ketamine journey was rediscovering spirituality to some extent. But now it's mine. My faith is my own.
Exactly.
I choose what I believe in.
Yeah.
And that makes it much more powerful for me. And it is nice. I have the belief now, I think, that to boil it down, basically, I think everything is going to work out in the end.
I hope so.
Not necessarily. I mean, obviously, some people die very unfortunate deaths, right? And maybe that will be me too. But I maybe partly believe and partly hope that there is something after, and that eventually everything will work out. And that doesn't mean we should do nothing, because there's no reason to live in our lives suffering in a nightmare. But it brings me peace to think that no matter how difficult things might be at any one point in time, I think that eventually, even if it's not in this world, it will work out. And that gives me, it gives me something to look forward to.
Yeah.
But it's all purely unfounded. I think my prior self would have said, that's quite unscientific. And it's like...
Yeah, but this isn't really about the science of it.
No.
It's more like... Well, it is about the science behind that feeling of like...
Peace.
I have faith that things will work out. I have peace. It gives you a sense of peace with the universe, really. Yeah. And sort of control over your life. Or a lot of people might think that it gives them an excuse to kind of hand over control of their life in a good way and say, I'm going to hand this off to whatever spiritual being, supernatural being you believe in, and they are going to take care of me. And that can be very powerful for people who are struggling with certain things as well.
That feels to me a lot like what I was saying, and that some people say, well, everything's going to work out in the end. So that's my excuse to sit here and do nothing. And I did used to have a feeling like that before I lost my faith, and it ruined me. It was very hard because, basically part of it was that I knew from a very young age that I was trans, but I didn't really know what trans people even were, because that information was concealed from me. And when I eventually began to realize, I still wanted to reject it and basically say, it's okay. I'm just going to live my whole life in this hellish nightmare as a man forever, and then I'll die. And maybe after I die, I'll be rewarded for having done that. And that is awful. That is a poisonous thing to think.
Sure, but I think everyone's experience with religion is not going to be the same as yours. I think
That's
that a
true.
lot of people might take comfort in... There's a lot of things about certain religions that focus, in my opinion, far too much on suffering for some greater reward. And I don't agree with that necessarily. But I do think that if you are not, tolerating this suffering, the idea of believing in a nice place that you're going to go someday is nice.
Well, I do think, but that isn't handing it off to anybody, right? That my life is my life. I think we have to fight for the lives that we have. But then after that, yes, I have some thought and peace that we're going to have something better.
Yeah.
But I do worry. I can see what you're saying. Obviously, everyone's experience isn't the same as mine. And if you want to hand off something that is really difficult to deal with or outside of your control to a higher power or something like that, or a spirit, I can see how that could be appealing and useful. I just think, I worry that by doing that, you haven't actually addressed the source of the issue. Yeah. Sometimes, not everyone, but a lot of people. And that maybe it's good to do that if you can't deal with it, because what else are you going to do? Have a breakdown, which I've had many in my life, and they're not pleasant and they don't get you very far.
Yeah. I think a lot of times, it can be overwhelming. And
yes.
For you just to say, I'm going to let this other person, being, to take care of it for a little while.
That's perfect. I think if it's for a little while, I just think at a certain point, you should try to take a little bit more, right? My life's a little bit better. I'm in less of a difficult situation. And I gave this thing to a spirit. But now I think I can begin to address it. Just the top layer, just a little bit at a time. And whatever spirituality is letting you put this to the side a little bit, it can hold most of it for you, but you shouldn't let it hold it for you forever, for your whole life. And also, I will say, I think a lot of people even might hear what I'm saying and say, well, that's a great idea, but my life is really hard right now. There is never a 100% perfect time for you to address these issues, right? So as long as it's not going to completely overwhelm you, I think you should be willing to address these problems that you might have just a tiny little bit at a time, just as much as you can, just a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, and just think about it. And then if it's too much, you can let it go again. And that, I think, is good. I just worry that, like, giving it to God or whatever, that you can do that your whole life and then get to the end of your life and say, what have I done? What a waste that I was always trans and I lived my whole life not as the gender that I see myself as, because that's what was easier and that's what I was told to do.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah. Well, to segue, so you mentioned earlier the miasma theory.
Mm-hmm.
So medieval scholars and physicians believed that diseases could be spread through scent. So there was actually quite a heavy aromatherapy sort of theories and research into it in the Middle Ages. And we know a lot about aromatherapy today, and you and I know a lot about aromatherapy as we've been working on our little business.
You more than me, but yes.
So clinical aromatherapy is a complementary medicine therapy that is quite beneficial, both inpatient and outpatient. It helps with symptom management for pain, nausea, general well-being, anxiety, depression, stress, and insomnia. It's been proven to be extremely beneficial for preoperative anxiety, for example, for patients undergoing radiation treatment, for people in hospice or on palliative care. We have scientific proof that olfactory stimulation triggers the release of endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, etc. So there is a lot to be said about, like, yes, obviously bad smells are not going to give you COVID, but good smells make you feel good.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of smells that we know target like specific feelings. Like, I think pretty much everyone's familiar with like lavender being this calming, like, sleep aid, and
I love
mint,
lavender.
peppermint is like an invigorating sort of a scent. So I will use this moment to kind of push, if you're interested in kind of looking at what we've been doing with aromatherapy products. We do have some on our website, alchemy.co.uk. It's alchymis.co.uk. Obviously, you can invest in essential oils yourself and kind of look into aromatherapy further. But if you're interested in what we've been doing, please check us out.
We have you made me that sachet that I put under my pillow.
Yeah, the lavender
that has
one.
The lavender. That is really nice.
Yeah.
I love lavender. It's so calming for me.
So some really interesting things that just I found resonated really well from the Middle Ages to modern, complementary therapy. There was an Iranian scholar in the 10th century who felt that medicine should focus on treating each patient as an individual rather than just treating the symptoms. His writings were widely translated and had a really heavy influence on European medicine. And I think that's something that we struggle with a lot today with sort of the industrialization of medicine. It's really easy to say, oh, your head hurts, take a paracetamol and go to bed, but not looking at this wider picture of the person. Like, how have you been sleeping? How have you been eating? Have you been drinking your water? That kind of thing.
I think personalized healthcare is almost the biggest thing that we lack. I think healthcare was industrialized as like, this is the cheapest way that we can automate to get you all back to work, basically. But obviously, if you have a certain level of wealth, you have like a staff of doctors and their job is to take care of you. Now, obviously, I don't think we could afford that for everyone, frankly. But I do think if you want to be healthier, you have a better idea of the holistic picture of your own health than anyone.
Yeah.
So it's good for you to know some of the basics at least.
Absolutely.
Like, I know there's a lot of focus on a lot of people are dehydrated. So drinking water is very good for you to stay hydrated.
Because a lot of times I have this thing where I'll just sit back and be like, I just feel really bad. So you kind of have to go down the checklist. Did I get enough sleep last night? Have I drank enough water? When was the last time I ate? When was the last time I stood up and walked? When was the last time I was outside? When was the last time I played with the dog? You sort of go through this it's really hard to do that for a lot of people, especially if you're neurodivergent or, people with ADHD or autism have a hard time connecting to our bodies in a lot of ways. And you're just sort of like, I just feel really crappy and I don't know why.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that having a checklist is a really good idea, because all of it can affect you. Absolutely. And it isn't always obvious to know why you feel bad. I mean, I remember when I was much younger, I was calling out sick quite frequently while working for like 1 week, and I had these horrible headaches and I had no idea why. And it's because I had a big coffee every day, and some jerk had switched they'd switched the coffee to decaf. So what I was actually doing was going through caffeine withdrawal basically every day.
Yeah.
You can get a headache for all kinds of reasons, and it can be fixed with all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
I know you get migraines all the time when the weather changes.
Yeah, I have a weird, barometric sensitivity.
But that isn't weird. That's very common. But what helps you a lot is just when I give you a face rub, around the sinuses particularly. Oh, yeah. And that is not something that you would think of, right? And I know often, if we have a big storm coming, I'm thinking to myself, I better make sure
That's on my checklist.
I'm ready to go give my wife her face rub so that she feels better.
If I start feeling crappy, I'm like, when was the last time? Is it raining?
Yeah.
When was the last time I saw sunshine?
It's good, too. It's also, I find it quite interesting because I think the barometric pressure can make your joints hurt sometimes. But that's actually, funnily enough, because I don't look at the weather very often as I should. So often you'll be like, oh, I have a headache. And I'll be like, is there a big storm coming? And I look it up and I'm like, yes, there is. And you have the weather sense, which maybe isn't as useful in our modern day world with meteorology.
If I had lived in the Middle Ages, that'd be
amazing. You'd be a weather witch. Absolutely.
I'd be like, oh, my knees acting up.
I mean, who says you aren't?
Storm coming.
Who says you aren't a weather witch? You can still do it. Just because they have meteorology doesn't mean you've got a pretty reasonably accurate sense that a big storm's coming. You get a big headache. I give you your face rub that fixes it, and you let me know that there's a big storm coming.
You're too funny. You are so funny. That's so good. Whew. Okay, so to get back to the Middle Ages.
But they didn't know that, right? They didn't know about barometric pressure.
But they knew.
So they just knew my knee hurts
Auntie's
sometimes.
Knee hurts.
Yeah, and that means that there's a big storm coming.
The storm is coming. It's so funny. Yeah, it is good. I was reading that book about Newfoundland and how there would be old ladies who'd be like, you shouldn't go fishing today. You ain't gonna catch no fish.
There's a storm brewing.
Storm brewing.
That's good.
They didn't sound like that, by the way. I just only know how to do that accent when I'm talking about old ladies.
I can't do a Newfie accent either. So,
so a fun archaeological dig that I did some looking into, Sutra Isle. So this is in Scotland, and it was founded in 1160 by Augustinian monks. It was a massive medieval complex that stretched over a ton of acreage. So they had their own farm and their own crops and all of that good stuff. And the whole complex held 300 to 400 people at its peak. So it had a church and a monastery, and most importantly, it had the largest hospital in Scotland at the time. And they actually were chartered by the King of Scotland at the time to provide medical care to anyone who needed it. So they had a massive, basically a waste pit. Mm-hmm. Trash pits are basically where archaeologists, that's their favorite thing in the whole world is to find a trash pit. That's the best thing in the world for archaeologists. And they had a medical waste pit specifically for medical waste.
Interesting.
So we were able to find out a ton of really cool information out of it. So they were able to find successfully amputated limbs had been thrown in the waste pit, which they tested and were able to find evidence of hemlock and opium poppy on.
Interesting.
So they were giving, hemlock and opium poppy to people in order to perform successful amputations, which those are both extremely poisonous if you have too much of them. So it proves that they had a really high level knowledge of chemistry and individual metabolism.
Well, opium poppy is the same stuff that morphine and heroin and all that is made out of.
Yeah.
I do find it very funny that, I mean, the whole, like, you know, you used to be able to just grow opium poppy in your yard, and then you could just have a nice opium tea or whatever, and, like, that's, like, very illegal today. But it wasn't that long ago that it was legal. Like, people were doing this in, like, the 40s.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like we talked about in our first episode.
Yeah.
There was definitely a movement of criminalization against medicine.
I mean, I also know my grandfather told me a story about how he used to work, because in New Hampshire, where we lived, there was a lot of, like, basically hills everywhere. So in order to make the roads go through the hills, they'd blow up the hill. So he worked doing that for a time, and he was hungry. They weren't really paying him enough to live on, basically. So he would grab a blasted cap, just throw it in the lake. That's where he'd get his fish.
Yeah.
I'm like, on the one hand, like, that's really cool. But on the other hand, you know, if you do that, if everyone was doing that, you'd run out of fish real quick.
Yeah. So they also found evidence of female midwives, which there were no records, because they have physical records of the monasteries and everything. So there's no midwives in the records, but they had to have midwives because Augustinian monks were not allowed to perform midwifery. But we found, not we as in I was there, like, you know, they found ergot and juniper along with the remains of stillborn or premature babies. So these are both drugs that were used to either trigger abortions or to bring on labor if there was a problem in the late of the pregnancy.
Interesting. So that I find quite fascinating. I know that midwives were stellar throughout a lot of this time period.
Yeah.
I actually think maybe it was the Victorian era. This was much later. But a story that I know that I'll maybe go into briefly here because we might do an episode on it later was the guy who discovered that hand washing and washing tools was important. Again, this was pre-germ theory, but it was like 1800s pre-germ theory. And basically, they would do autopsies on the women that had died, and then without washing the tools, use them on the women who were still alive giving birth, and it would kill them en masse, basically. And what he did was study a lot of midwives and basically said, okay, well, this hospital run by all these men, modern doctors, you know, has like 10 times the death rate, infant mortality, as this group of random midwives. So what are they doing that we're not? And a lot of what they did is they'd have like clean towels and hot water. And those, now we know a lot of it is like, it's sterilizing, basically.
Yeah, it's always really interesting when I think back to like when I was reading like Anne of Green Gables, for example, and somebody's giving birth and the first thing somebody yells out is, start boiling water.
Yeah.
And you're like, why? And it's like midwives knew, boil hot water to clean your equipment, clean the towels, clean the sheets that you're using.
But they didn't totally know why.
Yeah.
But that tradition that it had worked had been passed down until it was all taken away from them, and then a ton of people started dying.
Yeah. But even, like I said, going back to the whole hygiene thing, the Sutra Isle, we have evidence of quicklime being used as a cleaner and a disinfectant. So
That's
they would wash down surgery rooms in it.
Yeah. So they did know. It has to all be clean. They may not have known why precisely, but they still did it.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But I was going to say, for me, like, my final thoughts on this is just, again, obviously, I like modern medicine and I like modern technology, but there's still something so important about learning about how people of the past felt about certain things, and to know that, like, this whole idea of like a holistic view of whole body wellness, being hydrated and well rested, and taking care of your mental health as being good for your physical health seems like such an outrageous concept for a lot of people. They're like, oh, you're crazy, you're one of those wellness people, like you're woo woo, and you know,
I mean, I am a little woo woo.
but it's like, this is something that we've known about for 1,000+ years as essential to living a good, healthy, wholesome life. So it's not just an out there idea that came out of nowhere and only, modern pretty blonde girls who are trying to sell you supplements invented it. Like, this is a real thing that real people did and still do, and that you can do for yourself and should.
If you take care of your own health and are more knowledgeable about what affects it and what is wrong with you and what you need to do to feel better, you are going to do so much better than someone who just deals with the modern, industrialized, it's the same for everyone medical system. Because the truth is, a lot of it, I think, you have to look at what the point of it is, right? And I think people want to believe, and for many medical professionals, this is true, but people want to believe that the medical professional is there specifically to make you feel better, right? And it's like, no, a lot of them, unfortunately, are doing it because it's a good job that pays a lot of money. And a lot of them are doing it because, for other reasons, right? Or the government is funding it or not funding it because they want you to get back to work, basically. They don't necessarily want you to live a really good, happy, healthy, wholesome life. They want you to be able to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said it in the first podcast episode that modern medicine is not designed to make you feel better. It's designed to make you feel good enough to get back to work.
Yes.
And I think I do believe that in a lot of ways. And I think that a lot of people who've experienced chronic conditions can probably connect with that idea of, like, I had to look at my own body and I had to take care of me and dig into it myself because the system wasn't designed to do that.
I've had doctors in my life that have been absolutely amazing, that have been proactive, that have helped me with things I didn't even know I had problems with. I've also had doctors in my life who I had to lie to get the treatment that I need, which I will not advise that you do because I'm sure it's in a legal questionable area. But basically, being able to take care of your own body to some extent. You're not a medical professional, so you're often not going to be anywhere near as good as a doctor, unfortunately. But just doing even the basics, hydrating, making sure you get good sleep, making sure you play with your dog, making sure that a partner gives you a face massage if you have a migraine. All of these tiny little things can make such a huge difference in your life versus seeing a doctor who may not be able to assist you to the extent that you need, right? Because, I mean, like, if you went to a doctor with your migraines, I think the standard treatment is probably just to give you painkillers.
Yeah, I mean, there are some migraine treatments for people, but I feel like my migraines specifically are not the same as a lot of the chronic migraines that people experience. Mine are so, like,
sinus.
Yeah, weirdly triggered and
there are treatments for that.
Yeah.
But a very good treatment is to get your partner to give you a face massage, And no doctor is going to write on a slip, get your partner to give you a face massage. Okay, take that to your partner. Yeah. So you can go to the doctor, and you should. But also, there are other things you can do that will help.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that is all I have on the Middle Ages. We are going to jump into the birch tree.
One of my favorite trees, actually.
Yeah. So I have our sticks of birch.
I want a stick.
You want a stick? You want to test both of them this time so you can tell which one you like better?
Oh, I just love birch. I love the feel of it.
Yeah.
The crispiness of the bark.
Yes.
It almost kind of breaks away as you touch it.
There are 2 birch species in Europe and England. The first is the silver birch, Betula pendula, and then there's the white birch, which is Betula alba. I believe these are white birch that we are holding. It is called the oldest tree in Europe. The species has existed since the end of the last ice age. It came pretty much kind of as the world was thawing. It kind of came down, starting up north and coming downwards. There are a couple of native North American species that you looked at, the paper birch, and I think you said that there was one other one, like the river birch, I think was in the list.
Yellow birch is the one that I knew.
Yeah.
Yellow birch and paper birch were the two big ones.
Yeah. So
I was in the Boy Scouts, actually, at the time. They covered a lot of information about them, some of which I still remember and find I love birch. My favorite drink for a long time was root beer, which drink in moderation. It is not very healthy. There's a lot of sugar in it. And I will say, modern root beer, it's mostly all made with chemicals, right? But a lot of the original root beer was actually made with birch root. But I will say, actually, I don't necessarily resent that a lot of it is made with chemicals these days, just because pulling up birch root can hurt. I mean, it will hurt the tree. It can kill the tree. And a lot of the reason that there was so much birch root available in New Hampshire, where I was, is because basically they were cutting down every single tree in the whole very forested state.
yeah, birch is a very good building material as well. There's a lot of, so if you're cutting it down to build yourself a house, might as well grab the roots while you're at it. So still have archaeological evidence of baskets, dishes, containers, jewelry boxes, and even shoes called lapti, which were made of birch bark. It is a moisture-resistant material, so it was very often used in constructing roofs.
See, birch bark, I mean, I remember we had a birch tree die at the top of our driveway when I was younger. And it's so, I don't know if you've seen, but it's very bizarre. It breaks off in, these great big sheafs, chunks.
Yeah.
And I just love it. It's so much fun. I mean, so we had a birch tree die. We weren't doing anything with it, and I was a child. But I used to pick up these chunks that would basically drop off the tree as it was, decaying.
Yeah. I will say, don't peel birch bark from a live tree.
Oh, no, that'll kill the tree. That's horrible. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I didn't even peel it off this other tree. It would just fall off naturally. Yeah. But it was it's these great big sheafs of this paper-like material almost. And it was so cool, honestly. I loved it. I love birch trees. They're a good tree.
So all across Europe and especially in Russia and a lot of the Slavic nations, the birch is deeply woven into culture and spirituality. In Celtic traditions, it is the very first tree of the Ogham alphabet called Beath, symbolizing inception, purity, and potential. In the Slavic folklore, everyone agrees that a birch tree represents the female nature. So when you were talking about how it almost has a delicacy to it, delicacy not as in food, but it has a delicate nature. It has been traditionally associated with feminine power. So it's usually birch is the feminine power and oak is the masculine power. Birch was believed to favor young girls. You would go to it and pour your heart out to it. Brides would visit it in times of joy. Widows would visit it in times of sadness.
That's funny. I used to kind of do that to some extent, to be honest. Yeah. So it carried on. I certainly wasn't taught to do that, but we did. We had a lot of birch trees right up at the top of the driveway where I would wait for the school bus. And I loved those birch trees.
So in the banya or sauna, steamed birch leaves release phytoncides that sterilize the air and act as natural antiseptics for the lungs. So it's very commonly used to have a birch branch with the leaves still on it in the sauna.
I love that. We've been in a sauna, and I will say a sauna is fantastic just for clearing out your pores and things as well. That sauna we went in, I don't think they had birch. They had some other plant, but I will say that she did it as part of a ritual where she would dip the leaves in some water and then kind of rustle it over you. And if you closed your eyes and kind of meditated and dwelled in that heat and steam, it felt like you were in almost in the woods being rained on gently by a light summer rain.
Oh, and it smelled so good.
The smell was spectacular. So she didn't do that with birch, but I can see. I mean, I just absolutely adore birch, so I'm sure I'd love that probably even more.
A fun folktale. So the birch tree was often mentioned. It was said that a witch could milk the branches of a birch tree. She flew at night not only on a broom or bread shovel, but on a birch stick. Among Russians, the ritual of curling the birch is performed on the Thursday before Trinity. Girls go into the forest, choose a young birch tree, and while singing ritual songs, twisted the branches into rings, tying them with ribbons or belts. They dance in circles around the curled birch tree, tell fortunes about future marriages, and share a feast. Then at the end, they would wash themselves with birch sap for beauty and health.
So this is like a girls' day?
Yes.
That's awesome. We should bring that back.
The famous maypole is most likely started out as a birch. The earliest recorded mention of the maypole tradition comes from a Welsh poem, and I apologize to any Welsh people who might be listening because I'm going to try and pronounce these things. So the Welsh poem was written by Griffith ap Atha ap Dafydd,
Okay.
who wrote in the mid-14th century at Llanidloes in central Wales. The poet speaks of a tall birch tree around which the festivities took place. I think I did pretty good there, actually.
No, I think you did amazing. Honestly, it was better than I can do. I will say, you mentioned one of the birches is called Alba.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that is that more common in Scotland, maybe? I know it's colder up there as well.
I'm not sure. The white birch, I think, is more common in the UK, yes.
Yeah. So.
The rusalka is a water spirit associated with the birch tree in Russian folklore. It's sort of like almost a mermaid kind of a thing. The rusalka would come out of the water on special days to like hang in the birch tree limbs.
Aren't the rusalka quite siren-y, though? Like they drag you into the water and kill you?
They can, yes. In later myths, they became that way.
I wonder if they didn't do that to take it away a bit, right? Because it was like these old pagan roots. And then they're like,
yeah, there's
actually it's an evil monster that will kill you.
There's actually an early summer festival called Rusalka Week. A group of women leave their settlement and hold a ceremony. A young girl is chosen as the Rusalka, a female water spirit. Her dress would be adorned with branches of birch and flowers would be woven into her hair. As with the girl, one of the birch trees would be chosen as the Rusalka as well. The women would bring offerings of fried eggs and beer to the chosen tree, dance, speak charms, and weave garlands around it. The birch tree would then be chopped down and then sort of sacrificed into the water. With this, the women were said to secure the goodwill of the Rusalka, sacrificing to them in order to protect their community.
Didn't you say it was antiseptic to some extent?
Yes.
I wonder if maybe that helped. I mean, probably not if it was a great big body of water and I'm finding things that aren't maybe there. But I mean, it does sound fun. I wouldn't mind fried eggs and beer.
So yeah, they are commonly seen as like the restless souls of women who were drowned that haunt the water, luring men into the water. In some stories, they had transformed into swans, geese, and ducks. In others, they were more like huntresses or Amazon-like women. They could either help or hinder depending on how they were treated. It does seem like they weren't really seen as hostile, except later on they sort of became these more malevolent creatures.
I wonder if it's more like, they're water spirits, it sounds like, but like the one that I know is Kappa, right? A lot of the stories about Kappa, which is the Japanese little water gremlin thingy, it's like they can be fickle because they're spirits, but not necessarily innately hostile.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, I think, in our modern day to think of any of these creatures as like innately evil because there's just so much folklore kind of from both sides. And I think it's more like, hey, maybe a creature that you meet with kindness is going to be kind and a creature that you meet with malevolence is going to be malevolent.
Probably a good way of thinking about it, to be honest. I think that's often true about people as well.
Yeah. So now on to the more science-y side of things.
Okay.
The anti-carcinogenic effects of betula bark, known or the chemical compounds called betulin and betulinic acid, have been pretty extensively studied. As with the ash tree that we discussed in our last episode, the leaves are very rich in flavonoids and vitamin C. It's very renowned for helping to flush the urinary tract. So it's used, or it was used most commonly to support your body during cystitis or kidney stones or anything like that. The main constituents of the birch leaves are phytochemicals, like we've discussed, flavonoid glycosides, phenolic derivatives, lignans, diheptanoids, and triterpenes. And just in case you don't know, phytochemicals are known as bioactive, non-nutritious compounds produced by plants for defenses and structure. They provide color, aroma, and flavor. Most importantly, they are powerful antioxidants, anti-inflammatory agents, and can help boost your immune system.
Interesting.
Yeah. In 2017, there was a study that compared the birch leaf to cranberry in its level of effectiveness in antimicrobial activity.
So it is quite antiseptic.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. So I wonder, you chop down a whole birch tree and dunk it into a lake. Maybe it helped a little bit, right? Because it is also like it floats on the surface of the water. But the surface of the water is probably also where you're getting your water from. So maybe if there's a bit of ickiness on the surface of the water, it can help cover it up a little bit. And that almost plays back into like, I bet you it smelled lovely. Oh, yeah. Freshly cut birch. I mean, even this. I just adore.
Yeah. Every
birch.
Time we have a wood on the podcast, I'm going to be sitting over here. The camera's going to show me sniffing a stick. This is our stick sniffing section.
See, my sniffer is a little bit dead. I have a bit of it's called a nausea. Yeah. Yes. But I can still just... Especially where it's been cut. Mm-hmm. Smell the lovely smell of birch. It's hard to find words for it, It's like describing a color almost. Yeah. But it is like it's a very gentle, I think, smell. I just love birch. I love birch. It's my favorite.
The other component of the birch that is very important is the birch sap. So in the early spring, which actually it is being done right about now, or in February and early March, before the leaves bud, you can tap a birch tree and collect its sap. It is clear, slightly sweet water. And I did get some birch water from Finland, and you did not like it.
Do we have some here?
No, I didn't bring any with me because you didn't like it. But I loved it. To me, it kind of felt like drinking like from a mountain stream or a wood stream where, like, yes, I could taste stuff in the water, but it wasn't like gross stuff. It was like this, it was like the wood of the trees around it had like infused this water with their energy. I was a big fan.
It was a very... Your mileage may vary, of course.
Yes.
I will say it was a very, like, I could feel that too, that there was like a woodiness, a little bit of like an earthiness to it. And it did feel like, it felt very natural.
Yeah.
But I will say my personal experience, I found it to be it was almost like muddy in a way.
Yeah, like I said, I felt like very much like I pulled some water out of a woody creek bed, and that can be good and it can be bad. And I can definitely see where you weren't a fan of that.
I do think it came in a can. Mm-hmm. So my initial first thought was, I can just like knock it back. That was the terrible idea.
Don't chug the birch
Do not
water.
Chug the birch water. That was probably the worst way imaginable to consume it. So then that sort of put me in like a bad space to appreciate its merits.
But birch water is rich in minerals such as calcium, magnesium, and potassium. So it's really good for you. Another thing is birch leaf extract is a good topical treatment, and you have actually been experimenting with that because you are my guinea pig always. So Cheshire does suffer from a little bit of scalp psoriasis. She gets that flaky, super itchy scalp. It can get really bad and scab over if she doesn't take care of it, and she does have a medicated shampoo, but I decided to do some birch leaf in jojoba oil and let that infuse for a little bit, and used it as a scalp treatment.
extremely generous to say a little bit of scalp psoriasis. I have crazy scalp psoriasis, and it's under control now. But as a child, it was not. And it is very like the birch oil that we were using, I think did help a lot. That said, I wouldn't ditch the medicated shampoo anytime soon.
I will say that is something that I'm thinking about releasing on the website. So if it is something that you're interested in the future and you don't want to have to go out and find birch leaves and infuse jojoba oil for 4 to 6 weeks and all of that good stuff, you can check out the website and get it when it comes out. I'm going to have little 30 milliliter sample bottles that you can get if you're wanting to just try it out. And of course, always like spot test stuff is what I always recommend before going whole hog on it.
Yeah, God forbid you have an allergy or something, and that would be terrible. But just a little spot test. But it is, I find it a lot more delicate, but still quite effective.
So working with birch bark, there's a couple of fun things that you can do with it. Obviously, the besom or witch's broom is going to be the most popular one. It's really nice to find like a flexible birch branch with leaves attached. Basically, you gently sweep the air around your body, your altar, or out the doorway of your home, kind of sweep out the negative energy. I think it's really important, especially now we're getting into the spring. So I think there's that open all the doors and windows, sweep all the bad stuff out of your house.
Let the good air in.
Yeah.
Let the miasma out.
Yeah. Couple of interesting birch bark things you can do. You write a wish or an intention on a piece of birch bark, and then you can either burn it or bury it back into the earth.
I like burying it. That sounds nice.
Just like I did in our last episode, I have done a little meditation that we're going to do with our birch sticks. Okay. But yeah, we're going to do just to close out the podcast, we're going to do a nice little birch meditation. And I kind of focused it on spring, because I think we are getting into that time where everyone's like, I'm ready for spring. I'm ready for spring.
Yes, the wheel is turning, getting back to life, returning to the cycle.
So we're going to find a comfortable seat. We're going to let your spine grow tall like a trunk reaching for the sky. Soften your shoulders, relax your jaw, and allow your eyes to naturally close. If you are holding a birch branch or twig, feel the texture against your skin. Feel its subtle ridges, the lightness of it. If you are drinking your birch leaf tea, take a slow sip. Feel the warmth and the earthy flavor on your tongue. Let whatever you're using as your object be your anchor, your physical connection to the spirit of the birch. Now you're going to bring your awareness to your breath. Don't try to change it, but simply feel the natural rhythm of your inhale and your exhale. In and out. With each breath in, imagine that you are drawing in clarity. With each breath out, imagine that you are releasing the heaviness of winter. In, clarity, out, release. Now in the landscape of your mind, you're going to transform. You are a single birch tree standing in a quiet, sleeping forest. Your trunk is pale and luminous. Your branches are bare, etched like silver threads against a soft gray sky. You are a birch at the end of winter. Take 3 deep breaths and let your body settle into this new form. Feel the stillness around you, the deep, cold quiet of the earth. You stand patiently. You are not fully asleep, but you are dreaming of sun, of green. Feel the latent life within you. Now imagine in your mind's eye the sun grows a little warmer. There's a shift in the light. There's a subtle change in the earth beneath your roots. The deep frost begins to soften. Take 2 more deep breaths as you sit in this time of transformation. Focus on the tips of your slender branches. Imagine the invisible surge rising from your deep roots. A slow, sweet sap, the lifeblood of you, this tree, begins its familiar yet ancient journey upward. Up from the dark, nurturing earth, through your roots, up your resilient trunk, and out along each waiting branch. As you breathe in, imagine drawing energy up from the earth through the soles of your feet, up your spine. As you breathe out, send that energy out through your arms to your fingertips. The birch is stirring. Now you see on your silver branches the first signs, tiny hard buds wrapped in protective scales. They are promises, sealed tight. Feel the incredible potential held within them. Folded leaves, future catkins, an entire cycle of life. Bring your awareness to your own heart. Feel for your buds, your own promises and potentials waiting to unfurl. Perhaps this is a new beginning, a creative idea, or just a feeling of hope that you've kept sheltered. Hold it gently as the birch holds its buds, but allow it to warm and grow. In the landscape of your mind, a gentle rain falls upon you, the birch. Your buds swell, the scales loosen, and there, a single, tender, vibrant green leaf. Smell the air in your vision, the scent of wet earth, melting snow, potential. The tree that is you is humming with a quiet, vibrant energy. It is no longer waiting, it is becoming. Hold your branch, take one last sip of tea. Feel this energy in your hands and in your body. You have weathered seasons. You have held promises within you. And now, like the birch, you are ready to awaken, to reach toward the light. Carry with you the birch's gifts. You are not separate from this cycle of spring. You are a part of this beautiful, awakening world. When you are ready, you may open your eyes.
That was very nice.
I am so ready for spring. I hope everybody listening is also ready for spring.
I get to wear more cute outfits.
We get to pull out our dresses and skirts.
Yeah.
We get to enjoy the warming weather.
And I got an IPL, and I'm blasting myself with it so that I'm
We're
less hairy.
getting ready for beach time.
I have some Italian in me, so I have pillae multigemini, it's called, which is Latin for very, very hairy.
Oh.
So the IPL has been nice, and I'm looking forward to a spring where I'm less hairy.
But also hair is perfectly natural and normal.
Absolutely.
If you want to have hair on your body, you're allowed.
Absolutely.
I just happen to like smooth skin, so do you.
I actually think that some of the beauty standards that we have are based on very questionable things.
Yeah.
And probably hairlessness is one of them. But what can I say? I was raised that way my whole life.
I do really like the feeling of the smooth skin, though.
That's
what
true.
I like.
I like that a lot as well.
So that's just a personal preference for me.
The IPL also, from what I've read, won't really get rid of my hair. It just will make it lighter, so I won't look like a Sasquatch.
You don't. You're cute.
Oh, if you say so.
So that is the end of the podcast for today. I want to wish everybody a really good day. I hope, like I said, that you are getting ready for spring, whatever that means for you. I do want to thank everybody for listening to the first couple of episodes. We released the second episode this week, and spontaneous people listen to it, so I want to thank those people especially, because
we see
I'm just
you
excited.
Yes.
Even if it's 5-10 people, I'm just excited to get out and connect with other people who are interested in the same things we're interested in.
And let us know, too, if you have something you want to say. Everyone has their own opinions. Some people have a lot more knowledge than I do on many subjects, such as my wife. And, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, this podcast is about learning and growing and being not just well, but, being better, being good, being healthy. So all of those things are really important to us. So we would definitely want to hear from people who, even if it's just a topic you'd like us to cover, or if you want to share your story. As always, have a great rest of your day.
And this was Common Roots.